Now, if you've been travelling in outback Australia in recent years, you might have seen something that looks like a cross between a Ranger Ute and a Ford Territory, and it's sort of dressed up to look a bit like a zebra. Well, that car was the Everest undergoing development, and this is the production version. Except today, I'm not in outback Australia, I'm in Thailand for our first taste test of one of Ford's most important new models. Underneath, it's more Ranger Ute than anything else from the Ford stables. Same 3.2 litre 5-cylinder diesel with 143 kilowatts and a hearty 470 newton metres. Same four-wheel drive system and a ladder frame chassis. But there's one pretty major difference between the Ute and the Everest SUV, and that's with the rear end. Instead of leaf springs, you've got coils, all about bringing a bit more comfort to the equation. Inside too is a long way from the utilitarian feel of a Ranger. More effort's gone into the presentation and there are more features, including first-in-class active safety features like lane departure warning. Plus it has 7 seats. There's another big difference with the Everest, and that's where Ford wants to pitch it. Rather than Holden Colorado 7, Mitsubishi Challenger, Isuzu D-Max and the upcoming Toyota Fortuner, Ford is pitching the Everest as a direct rival to the Toyota Prado. Now that's a pretty big ask. The Prado does obviously have plenty going for it, decent off-road ability, heaps of space inside, and the biggest fuel tank in the business, 150 litres. Now that fuel tank alone has sold plenty of Prados. People just like being able to go and hit the bush, hit the Simpson for example, and not have to worry about jerry cans. The tank on the Everest is 81 litres, so you'll be making fuel stops a lot more regularly, especially if you're utilising its 3-tonne towing capacity. One thing the Everest has got going for it big time is wading depth, 800 millimetres, class leading. Let's give it a crack. You can see there it's barely reaching the top of the bumper. Okay, it's not the world's deepest water crossing, but wasn't phased at all with that. And indeed, the off-road credentials are strong. The approach angle is 29 degrees and the departure angle 25 degrees. There's a rear diff lock and low range. Now Everest uses a full-time four-wheel drive system, so in ordinary driving 60% of the drive goes to the back, 40% to the front, but it can apportion that as required. You've also got a bunch of electronics to help you out, so normal mode obviously for everyday regular driving and indeed a lot of what we're doing today. Chuck it into snow and ice or sand, where with sand for example you get much more sensitive throttle, the torque comes on sooner, lets a bit more wheel spin happen, so it's all about trying to get you through those things a little bit easier. So for this one we'll dial up the snow, mud and grass, a little bit less sensitive on the throttle, where obviously we want to be able to crawl up this sort of stuff. 225 mils of ground clearance, so it's plenty of the way off the ground. You can hear it there, that traction control just trying to ease us up, did that absolutely no worries, and it's sort of quite slippery, this muddy stuff. And of course if we want we can bung it in low range, so for the really serious stuff. And when you dial up the rock mode that it's got, it actually locks it into first gear, so you're not going to get out of that first gear, and really reduces the wheel spin. So instead of wheel spinning up rocks, it tries to just feel for which wheel has the most amount of grip and send the drive that way. So one thing Ford's thrown in the Everest is electric power steering. In low-speed manoeuvring like this, it is really light. You can feel it's really easy just to dart it around where you want. But when you start getting up to speed on a freeway or something like that, it starts to get a bit more load into it and feels, I guess, a bit more natural and more like you've got a bit more control around those corners. It's no passenger car the way it gets around corners. There's still some body movement and plenty of weight, about 2.2 tonnes. But it's pretty good for what is a capable off-roader. It's also refinement and stuff. A heck of a lot of work's gone into that. Obviously the Ranger's been a great selling ute. It's done a pretty good job. It's not the quietest thing in the world, particularly that engine. With this one what they got is active noise cancelling. It actually sends a frequency out of the speakers to counter that low frequency noise coming out of the engine and just try and dull it down a little bit. The result is a quieter cabin, and it is quite noticeable actually in the Everest. It's a lot quieter than what you'd expect in a ute-based SUV. So it's great for comfy cruising. The instrument cluster, when you look at the speedo in the Everest, it's very similar to what you get in the Ranger, but either side of it's quite different. You've got customisable screens, so you can actually look at the four-wheel drive systems, for example. On the right one it's more entertainment and so on the left, but fairly upmarket looking, and indeed the whole interior, the dash and everything's a bit upmarket. Maybe one of the downsides is the plastics on the door, a little bit scratchy, not quite those soft touch that you get elsewhere, but things like the dash, the stitching on the dash, for example, all looks very upmarket. So of course, the big question, Prado or Everest, it's a pretty big call. They've each got things going for them. Look, this test really is a taste test for us at the moment. It's not something we're going to make a massive call on and say that one's better than this one. But certainly the Everest is in the hunt. It's a big step up on what we've come to expect from ute-based SUVs.